The call came in at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because I just looked at my phone to check if my daughter had texted me goodnight. She was 17 and had started doing that, texting me a simple "night, Mom" before she went to sleep, and I'd come to love it more than I ever admitted out loud. Instead of her text, it was my mother's number on the screen. I almost didn't answer. We'd had a rough few months. Nothing dramatic, just the slow drift that happens when you realize you and your parents have fundamentally different values and everyone's pretending not to notice. But it was almost midnight and she was calling, so I picked up. "Your brother's in trouble," she said, before I even said hello. "My brother." "Of course. Let me tell you about my brother. He's 31 years old, charming in the way that only works on people who don't have to live with him. And he has spent the last decade being the sun our entire family orbits. He's the youngest. He's the one Mom calls first with good news. He's the one who gets the benefit of the doubt in every single situation, no matter how much evidence points the other way. I'm 33. I'm the one who figured things out on her own, paid my own way through community college, transferred to a state university, graduated with a business degree, and enough student loan debt to make me anxious every April. I built a small bookkeeping business out of nothing, client by client, spreadsheet by spreadsheet. I bought a house at 29, a starter home in a decent neighborhood, the kind of purchase that required 3 years of saying no to vacations and dinners out and new clothes. My daughter Ivy was the other thing I built. 17, sharp, kind in ways that surprised me, obsessed with marine biology and bad horror movies. Her father had been out of the picture since she was 4, not violently, not dramatically, just gradually and then completely gone. So it had been the two of us for a long time. We were good at it. The house had a finished basement I'd converted into a proper apartment when Ivy was 12. 2 rooms, a bathroom, a kitchenette. I'd done it as an investment. The plan was always to rent it out once I had enough saved for the work, generate a little extra income, maybe pay down the mortgage faster. I'd been renting it to a series of quiet, reliable tenants for almost 4 years, until 8 months ago, when my brother lost his job and my mother called with that particular tone she uses, the one that sounds like a request but is actually a verdict, and told me he needed somewhere to stay, just for a little while, just until he got back on his feet. I said yes. I shouldn't have, but I did. I gave him a rate that was less than half of what I normally charged. We wrote up a simple agreement, nothing fancy, just a document that laid out the monthly amount, what was included, and the expectation that he'd be actively looking for work. I told him it was temporary. He told me he understood. For the first 2 months, things were fine. He paid on time. He was mostly quiet. He kept to himself. Then things changed slowly enough that I almost didn't notice. He stopped job searching, or at least stopped mentioning it. He had friends over late on weeknights. I started finding cigarette butts on the back porch that he denied leaving, despite the fact that I don't smoke and Ivy doesn't either. Small things. Friction. The kind of stuff that makes you feel petty for bringing up. My mother called periodically to check on him, and in those conversations, I started hearing a version of events I didn't recognize. He was doing so well. He was so grateful to have me. I wasn't sure if he was performing for her, or if she was just only hearing what she wanted to. 3 months in, the rent came late. He apologized and paid the difference by the end of the week, plus a small amount extra that he framed as compensation. I didn't make a big deal of it. 2 months after that, it didn't come at all. I knocked on his door on the 5th of the month. He told me he was waiting on some things to clear. I gave him a week. He paid half. I gave him another week. Nothing. This is when I made my first mistake. I called my mother. I don't know what I expected. Sympathy, maybe. Some acknowledgement that he was an adult who owed me money and needed to be told that by someone he'd actually listened to. What I got, instead, was a 20-minute conversation in which she explained that he was going through a lot, that he needed support right now, and that it would really mean a lot to the family if I could be patient. I hung up the phone and stood in my kitchen for a while, Ivy was doing her homework at the table. She looked up and read my face the way she always does. "Uncle again?" she said. "Yeah." She went back to her homework without another word. She'd been watching this play out for months and she understood it better than most adults I knew. I went back to my brother the next day and told him plainly. He owed me 2 months of rent. He needed to pay it or set up a plan to pay it. And if he couldn't do either, I would need him to find another arrangement. I kept my voice calm. I didn't lecture him. I just stated facts. He nodded. He said he understood. He said he'd figure something out. He did not figure something out. What he figured out instead was a narrative. I started hearing it through the family grapevine. My aunt who lives 40 minutes away. My cousin who I talk to maybe twice a year. The story going around was that I had been squeezing him, that I was charging him way above market rate, that I was holding his situation over his head to feel powerful, and that I had threatened to throw him out without warning, despite the fact that he'd been a perfect tenant. None of that was true. I had our written agreement, I had bank records, I had text messages that were so mild and measured that reading them back made me tired, because you could feel me trying so hard not to be the villain he was already casting me as. But I didn't say anything. Not publicly. I just kept documenting. My mother called me one night and asked if we could talk about the situation with your brother. I said sure. She launched into a version of events so far from reality that I had to put her on speaker just to make sure I was hearing correctly. He'd told her I had raised the rent on him twice since he moved in. He hadn't paid because he couldn't afford the new amount. He'd been trying to have a grown-up conversation with me about it, but I kept shutting him down. I was quiet for a moment. "Mom," I said, "I have the original agreement in writing. The amount has never changed. I can send it to you right now." She said that wouldn't be necessary. She said she didn't want to get into paperwork. She said she just wanted us to work it out. That was when I understood what was actually happening. She didn't want to know the truth. The truth would have required her to hold him accountable, and that was something she had been avoiding for 31 years. It was easier to believe I was the difficult one, the rigid one, the one who couldn't just be flexible for family. I told her I'd think about it. I said goodbye. I did not think about it. What I did instead was contact an attorney. A friend of mine from my bookkeeping days had gone through a messy tenant situation a few years prior and had given me the name of someone she trusted. I called her office the next morning. We had a 30-minute consultation, and by the end of it I understood exactly where I stood. Because my brother was a family member who'd been paying something, even inconsistently. He had established tenancy. I couldn't just change the locks, but I did have a written agreement, a clear record of non-payment, and documentation of the timeline. My attorney told me that if I wanted to pursue formal eviction, I had a strong case. She also told me to stop having verbal conversations about the situation and to put everything in writing from that point forward. I went home and typed up a formal notice. It laid out what he owed, the timeline of missed payments, and a 30-day notice to cure or vacate. My attorney reviewed it. I had it delivered to him in person, handed to him directly, with a witness. He looked at it for a long moment, then he looked up at me and said, "You're really going to do this?" "I already did," I said. He called my mother within the hour. What followed was the worst 72 hours I'd had in years. My mother called me 4 times. My aunt called me twice. My cousin sent me a long text message that I read once and then set my phone down and went for a walk. The message contained phrases like, "Blood is thicker, and he's family," and "This is going to break our mother's heart." As if my mother's emotional comfort was something I was responsible for managing while her son refused to pay rent and lied about it to everyone who would listen. My brother texted me directly once. The message said, "You want to destroy the family over money." I screenshot it. I didn't respond. Ivy was home that evening. I told her what was happening, not to burden her, but because she was almost an adult, and she'd been watching this unfold, and she deserved to understand why things were tense. She listened. When I finished, she said, "Mom, You gave him a deal, and he still didn't pay, and then he lied about it. What else were you supposed to do? Sometimes 17-year-olds say exactly the right thing. 2 days after the notice was delivered, my mother called with a proposal. She wanted me to cancel the notice, forgive the back rent, which was now almost $3,000, and give my brother another 60 days to stabilize his finances. In exchange, the family would acknowledge that I'd been patient and thank me for my generosity. I want you to hear what she was actually asking. She wanted me to absorb a $3,000 loss, waive my legal rights, give him 2 more months in my property for free, and accept a verbal thank you as compensation. And if I didn't, I would be the one tearing the family apart. I told her I needed to think about it. Then I called my attorney. What are my options? I asked. She walked me through them clearly. I could proceed with the formal eviction process, which would likely take another 4 to 6 weeks given court scheduling, but would result in a judgment I could use to pursue the back rent. Or I could negotiate a move-out agreement directly. Give him a specific date. Agree to waive the back rent in exchange for him vacating by that date and leaving the unit in good condition, and move on. I asked which one she would recommend. She said it depended on what I wanted. Did I want the money, or did I want him out? I thought about it for about 10 seconds. Out, I said. We drew up a move-out agreement. It was clean and specific. He would vacate by a date 30 days out. The unit would be left in the condition outlined in our original agreement, and in exchange I would not pursue the back rent in court. He could leave with a clean record, and I could get my property back, and we would be done. My attorney sent it over. He had 48 hours to sign. He didn't sign. Instead, he went to my mother and told her I was trying to force him to sign away his rights, and that I had been advised by a lawyer to bleed him dry. My mother called me, genuinely upset, voice shaking, and asked me why I was doing this. I said, "Mom, can I send you the actual document?" She paused. I suppose. I emailed it to her. It was 3 paragraphs. It was about as aggressive as a grocery list. She called me back 20 minutes later and was quiet for a moment before she said, "This isn't what he told me." "I know," I said, another pause. "He said it was pages long, that it had all kinds of legal language." "It's 3 paragraphs," I said. "You can have someone else read it if you want." She didn't say much after that. We got off the phone, and I think that was the moment something shifted for her. Not enough to hold him accountable, not yet, but enough that she stopped calling me 4 times a day to advocate for him. He signed the agreement 11 days later. I don't know what changed. Maybe he finally got real legal advice. Maybe he just ran out of leverage. He moved out on the agreed date. The unit was not in the condition specified. There were holes in 2 walls, a broken window blind, and a bathroom situation I'd rather not describe in detail. All of it documented in photos, time-stamped. Under the agreement, I'd waived the back rent. I had not waived the right to charge him for damages beyond normal wear and tear. My attorney sent a letter itemizing the repairs. It came out to $1,140. He didn't pay it. I took him to small claims court. I want to tell you what that experience was like, because it's not what you see on TV. There was no dramatic reveal. There was no moment where he broke down and admitted everything. It was a Tuesday morning in a fluorescent-lit room with about 15 other cases ahead of ours. And when our names were called, a judge reviewed the documents I'd brought. The original agreement, the payment records, the notices, the move-out agreement, the photos, the repair invoices, and asked my brother if he had anything to dispute. He said the damage was already there when he moved in. The judge asked if he had documentation of the unit's condition at move-in. He said no. The judge looked at my move-in inspection report, which my brother had signed on the day he moved in, noting the unit's condition as good, with no existing damage listed. The judge ruled in my favor. Full amount plus court filing fees. My brother walked out of that courtroom without looking at me. My mother found out about the court date after the fact. I hadn't told her it was happening, and he hadn't either, apparently. She called me that evening. She sounded tired. "I didn't know it had gotten that far," she said. "I know," I said. I didn't want to involve anyone else in it. He's really hurt, she said. I took a breath. Mom, he owes me almost $5,000 when you add it all together. He lied to you about the agreement. He lied about the damages. He lied about everything. I have every piece of paper to prove it. I'm not the one who hurt anyone. She was quiet for a while. Then she said, I know you're not wrong, that sentence. 4 words. It was the first time in this entire situation that she had acknowledged reality out loud to me, and I want to be honest. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like too little, too late, wrapped in the exhaustion of someone who had spent 31 years protecting her son from consequences and was just now starting to feel the weight of it. I know, I said again. I'm sorry it got here. I meant it. I was sorry, not that I'd done what I did, but that we'd gotten to a place where I had to. My brother paid the small claims judgment eventually, in 2 installments, 6 weeks apart. I know this because the money appeared in my account with no message, no context, no acknowledgement of any kind. Just 2 transfers, 30 days apart, that together made up the exact amount the judge had ordered. I used the money to repaint the basement apartment and replace the blinds. Then I rented it to a nurse who works night shifts at the hospital 3 blocks away. She's quiet. She pays on the first. She texted me once to ask if she could put a small shelf on the wall, and I said of course, and that was the last remarkable thing that happened. My relationship with my mother is different now. Not severed. I'm not interested in dramatic endings. But different in the way that things are different once you've seen something you can't unsee. She knows I was right. She knows what he did. She's never said it plainly, but she knows and I think she's in that particular kind of grief that comes from realizing you spent decades choosing the easier story over the true one. We talk on the phone every couple of weeks. We keep it light. She asks about Ivy. I tell her Ivy is applying to marine biology programs and has her heart set on a school in Oregon. My mother says that sounds far. I say yes, but Ivy has always known what she wanted. My brother and I have not spoken since the courtroom. That doesn't make me sad in the way I expected it to. I thought I'd feel the loss more. That hollow family-shaped gap that people talk about. Instead, I mostly feel like the house is quieter, and the basement is bright with new paint. And when the first of the month comes, the money appears in my account without drama. There's a kind of peace in that. Not the peace of winning, exactly. The peace of not having to carry something that was never yours to carry in the first place. Ivy leaves for college orientation in 8 months. She's already started a spreadsheet of things to pack, which she shared with me through Google Docs so I can add to it. Last week I added the good flashlight and she sent back a thumbs up emoji, and then a second text that just said, obviously, Mom. I sat with my phone in my hand and laughed in my empty kitchen. We're going to be okay.